This is DRO for 8677, time 11:55 a.m. p.m. a.m. a.m.
I'd like to tell you what I just got done perceiving and then go on to anything else that might be good. I found myself just outside the atmosphere of the Earth, and some sort of ship was moving off into my field of vision in front of me, and I tried to tune in on that ship, and I was suddenly aware that there were 3 ships in a formation flying just outside the atmosphere of the Earth. And I then perceived the Earth to start spinning more and more rapidly with the sounds. It seemed as though the sounds increased in vibration, so did the speed of the Earth. And I asked what was going on, and I was told that these beings are now ready to move forward in making more contact with us on a more regular basis. And these 3 ships are going to be, it's like the explorer team sent out to make contact. And they're going to be making contact with as many consciousnesses on the Earth as they can. And that was the only thing. I just wanted to report that.
Very good. And just simply continue in the exploration direction you're moving and report in as you feel need.
All right. I'm being asked to go aboard the first ship that I saw, and I think I'll go ahead and do that. It's almost like I don't know. I get the feeling like the being on the ship is giving me the red carpet treatment, like, come on in and walk around and see what you think of this ship. And there seems to be kind of like a platform that goes up from the bottom of the ship, and it goes to this thing that looks something like a wishing well, except that it's light in the center. It's a very white light, and it shines up to another device similar above it. And there's kind of a round circular tubing around the outside of it. I'm going to move away from the ship, though, because I don't get that there's any. I was invited aboard, and I went aboard just kind of like, all right, I will. But I don't get any significance. I don't want to waste this exploration on things that are not necessarily important. He says it's not important that I stay one way or another. He just wanted to show me the inside of this ship. So I'm going to move on.
Do you wish to stay in contact with him?
Well, he's very joyful, and he just wants the message to be gotten that he and his men are going to be spending a lot of time and energy with us and with others, and that we should be aware of their presence, and that we should realize that more or less the really big changes are going to start happening in our consciousness. And he said that he hopes everybody will feel free to come aboard and look around and be in contact.
Very good. Ask him if we would be able to visually perceive with our physical senses his craft at any given time.
Okay. He says, yes, very much so, but we must make alterations in our own consciousness before this is possible. He says that his craft exists in more than one dimension, and this is one of the accomplishments that he hopes to make, is that he wants to strengthen the contact between the people here and and the ships. I believe the other two ships are not powered by beings, but are robot ships that he uses as some sort of energy thing, but they're fully able to help in the effort. And he says that very, very soon we will be seeing this his craft in the area of the new land. And he said that an actual landing is possible, but that let me see. He says landing would definitely be possible, and it wouldn't be too far off either, but that he would much rather make more contact of a mental nature, because this is what we're all striving for anyway, is increasing areas of our perception that are closed to us.
Ask him what we can do to recontact him directly.
All right. He says that he's going to be outside of our Earth, just outside the... what I'm seeing is where the atmosphere gets real gassy and it just starts to thin out into more deep space. That's just about where he's at. And he and these other three craft are just hovering there. He says that we can make contact with him most easily by being aware that he is there. He said being aware that he is there and that he is hovering above the earth is the main prerequisite, and that communication channels are open. He said that it would be helpful if people would get into 12 knowing of him. In other words, something to the effect that awareness of him increases the ability to get to him. And I can't get over how joyful he seems. So unlike the other entities I've ever come across, it's sort of like, well, we're here and we're going to get it done now. And I think the questions are amusing to him somewhat, because he doesn't feel as though the contact's going to be broken. He feels like this group of people his people have been drawn to us by our previous efforts, and it's sort of like, well, you don't need to worry.
There's no special thing that we can do, a signal we can think of to identify him other than the knowledge that he's there?
I'll ask. He says to think of the triangular pattern of his three ships. And that's exactly the pattern they're in, is a triangle.
What is the shape of his ship so that we can visualize that?
All right. The under portion of the ship, well, it's like a dome pointed downward with a long flat ledge extending out from where the dome comes up to the top. And then the top has a much smaller dome than the bottom, and consequently it has it looks somewhat like our traditional concepts of saucers, but this ledge that extends outward in the center is quite large. In fact, almost as large and around as the bubble part in the bottom, and the bubble on the top, which is much smaller, let me see. The bubble on the top houses the flight, the equipment, what propels the ship, and this device in the center of the ship, this light device, is the method that the people in the ship use to reach to move from one place to another. He says that it also will be possible for certain members of our group to be in contact directly with people from this ship in terms of actual meeting, physical. He says that you should be able to do this, and that the main method is an energy focus at a certain point, because what they seem to follow is the intensity of the thought. In other words, the thought of them being there, or an individual on his ship being at a certain point, held intensely, creates a thought pattern that they can follow down and more or less create being there.
Very good.
He says, though, that this is just a highlight of some of the things that will be going on, and actually, he says the way of what to do and so on, all the questions about how to contact and everything else are relatively immaterial at this time, that things will open up not only subjectively for us, but they will open up objectively, and that the main thing he's trying to get across to do is to be aware. In other words, to really critically look at what's going on in one's consciousness while they're awake and while they're dreaming, asleep, because there will be changes and communications and things and alterations going on, and it'd be very helpful to them if we were aware. And that's the only thing, just aware to be conscious.
Very good. If this is but one of the highlights, what are some of the other highlights we can expect?
Well, he says that he would like an actual interchange of ideas. The problem being now that he is from somewhat of a different energy system, and the problems of communication are very, very difficult to solve, but that we have gotten to a point at least where some sort of communication can flow back and forth in a somewhat distorted manner. And as far as the highlights, he hopes to instruct those people that are open to it, those people that he can make communication with in some of the newer technologies, or the different technologies that he is aware of, so that they can be implemented. So this is part of the highlight. This team is meant to work with all of us. They will be working with other consciousnesses on planet Earth, but it's sort of like, I almost get a feeling like an embrace, so to speak. It's like, well, here we are, and let's roll our shirt sleeves up, and let's really get down to making contact. And so as far as highlights, he says that he wants to explain the ideas of energy transfer to these people on the land that will be responsible for creating such devices and things, and that the problem is going to be getting clear transmissions to those people who are capable of performing such things. And the main important factor, once again, he keeps reiterating this, is that people have got to become aware. In other words, the information is being sent, but it has to be received. And he just wants everyone to start consciously working daily on opening lines of communication. He says that meditative practices, for instance, going to our Focus 12, and with the desire of opening lines of communication, is an important thing to do. And he says with more practice, these lines of communication can be opened, and ideas can flow down to the people who are willing to use these ideas, and through a sort of a gestalt effort of everyone combined, these ideas can be put together and integrated into systems that literally change many of our scientific concepts today. But he says that the actual visitations by members of his ship and so on and so forth are not possible immediately, because these lines of communication have to be strongly and firmly established. And
very good. Mm-hmm.
That's it, basically. Very, very warm individual.
Ask him in terms of intelligence, in terms of ability to develop consciousness. Do we inherently have as much ability as, say, he and his friends do?
He says that the total consciousness with which that we have is capable easily of understanding what he has to put out, but that we are using only a portion of our consciousness, and using that not at its peak at the moment. And he says that consciousness with which we are currently identifying with is not able to comprehend and be part of some of the concepts that he has to develop. And so one of his jobs will be, his major job now is to switch in consciousness. And he says the problems in communicating this are terrible, because he has to do it on many different levels, and our own concepts of the way, their own concepts of the way of the world and of nature and of matter and everything else are terrible impediments to his getting through. And consequently, he feels as though it's going to be difficult, but it's possible. And he says that what we're looking at is a major effort at developing lines of communication that are regular and accurate, which he says is intensely begun now, and probably within the next 2 years is the figure he's given me. There will develop among our group of people some very, very, very accurate and attuned individuals, which he and his people will work through more than others. He stresses, though, that everyone will develop some sort of contact, and in some way will have to translate this information from what we would call a subconscious level to a conscious level. He says some of it will just come to consciousness as ideas and thoughts, but that the original impetus is being sent through him and his people.
Very good. What has occasioned his interest in the inhabitants of the physical planet Earth?
He says that his particular brand of consciousness, particular family of consciousness with which he is a part of, has long been interested in consciousness throughout the universe. And it's more or less like his responsibilities have been a sector that included planet Earth for a long time, using the word time as we know it. In his terms, it has been, he doesn't experience time in the same way that we experience time. He says there is a shuffling of mental images that goes on, and as close as he can put it, the mental images that involve him being responsible for our portion of planet Earth, how can I put it? he doesn't experience time, he experiences mental images, and he is experiencing the mental images of being part of the mental images we are putting out, which roughly corresponds to he is experiencing being here at this point in time. And consequently, that's what he's doing. It's like a portion of his consciousness is sweeping through the universe and has reached this, has been attracted to us, our planet, by the mental emanations coming from it. It's like somewhat of a beacon. And his responsibility is to raise the consciousness of the portions of the galaxies that he is in charge of. But he says that this is an unfair representation because galaxies, planets, etc. is a physical concept, but that's the only way he can make it clear. He is part of more dimensions than the physical dimension. And what has occasioned this has a lot to do with the mental emanations he has felt from Earth, us, and others on the Earth. But he is very interested in working with our group and very interested in working with consciousness as it... it's so hard to say it. He's putting his ear, so to speak, to the mental emanations coming from all planets. And as the consciousness excites him, as the interest and the understanding, much as a small child begging for more, reaches him, he will add energy to it. He basically is trying to bring us into another sphere of consciousness because of our desire to be in that sphere of consciousness. And so he very much wants not to interfere, but to help.
Very good. Mm-hmm. If he is then in charge of this particular sector, how did he become in charge? Was he put in charge or what?
Okay. He says that in our particular system of understanding and language, terms like put in charge and a hierarchy of command are well understood. He says actually where he comes from, he exists as pure consciousness. When we travel from a non-physical universe into a physical universe, certain concepts have to be changed and altered. Consequently, it's so hard to explain this. What I'm getting is that he is here. The reason we're experiencing him being here and doing this is the fluke of our own particular space-time oriented consciousness. Actually, he says, he is here and not here at the same time. And in a sense, his he's saying something like all consciousness has with it as a basic impetus the drive to contact other consciousness and unite and experience. He says this is in a way what's going on. But we are in no position to understand that in terms of our space-time ways of thinking. And so a portion of all that he is takes on the form of beings from another physical system making contact, because that is a concept that we can understand and work with and get some benefit from. He says on the same terms, we are not physical, we are not entirely physical either, but we are at this point in our endless cycles, we are identifying with physical reality, and consequently it is that portion and time, and that's what we are identifying with, and that's the medium that he has to communicate with us on.
I see. Very good. Then the question, why is our consciousness so limited if we are also a part of that other consciousness? Why is this consciousness so limited?
Okay. Okay, he's telling me, what he said to me was that he'd explained this to me at another time and asked me if I didn't remember, and I got vividly the session where I was talking about all of the myriad possibilities that exist in the universe are existing somewhere simultaneously at one time. In a sense, there is another planet Earth in which the consciousness is equal to his. In a sense, we are currently focusing on this sector of possible reality. We are currently experiencing this as a part of our being. And because we experience time, we're experiencing this as the way we are for a definite period of time, such as a lifetime, etc. Actually, he is tuning into a wavelength, so to speak, of our possibilities. Something like the blind man and the elephant. Except he says that we actually can see, we're just not, the consciousness in us that he is addressing is acting out the role of that consciousness that is not experiencing the totality of what consciousness can experience. And it is perfectly right that this should go on. It's perfectly normal, and there is no implied lack of ability. There is it keeps going, his explanation, and I can tell we are trapped by space and time, so we experience these things. Actually, the lack that we're feeling is just like one end of a sine wave. Another minute we'll have a non-lack and have the potentials all the other way, except that's grossly simplifying it. All potentials are happening at once, and because of time, this is how it's being experienced and perceived. Was that understandable?
Yes. How did we get trapped in this is the question.
Okay. All consciousness moves in and out of time and no time. It also moves out of other concepts that we are not even aware of in our system of words. Because whenever any consciousness is in time, it experiences its being as a more or less permanent thing. Consciousnesses outside of time experience something that we would feel very schizoid about. We would be tall, short, fat, small, round, square, oblong, big, little, light, dark, all at once. And we would not feel any incongruity with all of those different feelings. Because we are a consciousness in time, and we are in that wavelength of being, we are experiencing what we're experiencing. And to any consciousness at that point in the wave, so to speak, a feeling of time pervades and adds to all the concepts involved. Consequently, we will move out of this sphere into another sphere of activity. And the only way the way out of this is to move the consciousness into these different dimensions. I'm doing a bad job of getting it through.
You're doing very well. You're doing very well.
He stresses the point that what seems to be a jail or a a physical prison, so to speak, is not. It is one speck of possible experience. But because we are experiencing time in it, we experience time. And to our distorted view, this is what we're feeling. And so he's not, as he points out, he's not really interceding and teaching us anything. But but our own in-time viewpoint makes it seem like that's what's happening. And in order to communicate, that's how it has to be worded and put. Eventually, as consciousness moves to other... Okay, I've got an analogy that's really good, suddenly came to me, he's given me. It's as though suddenly we as energy beings thought of the concept of time, just as though our minds had been randomly scanning through all possible combinations, and we thought of time. And all of a sudden we found ourselves experiencing matter and all of the other resultant things going with time. And all of a sudden we would literally be stuck in time and experiencing it as centuries, light years, and all of the other concepts that we have. Actually, what's happening is this being that we are is just thinking of this. I wonder what it would be like to be in time, and is experiencing that thought. In another moment of time, which is ridiculous, but it's the only way to use this analogy, the being will return back to the being and will think another thought, which might involve being green or being at a certain vibratory level, and it will then move its consciousness off into that. What we're experiencing is the thought form of our higher self, and that's what life is, a thought form. We thought, I wonder what it would be like to be physical, and here we are. Does that make it clearer?
Much clearer. Very good. Very fine. Mm-hmm.
So, because of our particular illusory position now, experiencing one of our billions of thoughts, we bring in people from other dimensions and so on as part of that thought, because it all ties together. It's all a kind of an offshoot of thought, and it's all very funny, because from his point of view, what's actually happening is we're just having a fleeting thought in the back of our soul, entity, whatever you want to call it. And it's so important to us that we're living it out we're really playing the role, he says. And he says this is all very fine and good. And we have played the role in all of the other thoughts that we've ever had too.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So, because we're in this particular mental set, we're going to have to play it out. We're going to have to take the drama through its various stages. And just as in the big soul being that thinks the thought and becomes physical, there's a portion of that at work within each one of us. And this portion of it within each one of us can now alter within the system of physical reality the alternatives and future events. He says it must be done in a loving, happy way, because in a way we have to realize that it's all like a giant play. And he says in our particular thought pattern we are working towards a world calamity. The consciousnesses in our world are trying to unite, trying to move back into that sphere of soulness. And to do that, they have to experience the totality of what they're thinking. And that's what we're in the process of doing. And each person with their own little role to play in the scheme of things is... each person has to take the potential of what they think they're experiencing and what they think they want to experience and move it. And he said, since we have desired to move our consciousness in a new direction, in a more expanded way, we have pulled him in. And in that sense, he says, he is not really separate from us, but a part of the thought form, the energy that we attracted him. We attracted the essence of him. And
very good. Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on.
All right. Well, very good. And thank you very much for the meeting and the discussion.
All right.
And tell him that we will have others of our group reaching out and thinking to be in touch with him. Is
All
there
right.
any type of name that we could use that would help make that contact?
Huh. He's being funny now, but he says there is no name, there is a feeling. He says the oh boy.
Try the feeling.
The feeling is, he gave me the word God, which I rejected. I said, are you telling me that you're God? And he says, no, but it's that sort of feeling. It's that expansive reaching out towards something higher, something not higher in terms of better, but something in terms of a more expanded picture. He said, reach out in the same way that we do when we expand to Focus 12. Expand to be Him. Expand our consciousness to where it is there. Fill that space and we will be there. That's all he said.
Is there any pattern of color that we could think of that would help reach him?
He said, thinking of water and thinking of cool, clear, crystal water, pure water, and thinking of traveling down a stream to its source would be an excellent way of reaching him.
All right. Fine. Mm-hmm. Is there any final message that he has for this meeting?
No, just stressing that all of the, as far as futures, he says it's not a matter of what he has in mind for the future, but what future we want to bring into physical reality. That there are all futures possible. And if we do want a contact with a being from another galaxy with ideas that shed scientific light to our physiological, mechanical thinking, we can bring this into being. If we don't, we can bring other things into being, and it's just a matter of concentrated sending of mental images in the direction that we all feel subjectively he is.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for being there, for being with us.
All right.
And we will surely, happily and joyfully reestablish contact.
Okay.
Now that you've done this, move back into normal focus 12. Back into normal focus 12. How you doing?
Fine.
Have a good time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did this person have any looks about him at all? Did he look like anything?
He was, I honestly had the feeling he was playing with the idea of consciousness. He looked various ways to me at various times, and I asked that question. I said, what do you look like? And I got back that I looked like whatever, he looked like whatever I wanted him to look like. He was very that way about everything. The underlying message I got out of all this is that someday all of us are going to realize just that we could go a million different directions with our consciousness. He appeared mostly to me, in answer to your question, though, to be very tall. Mm-hmm. And
he assumed a humanoid form then.
Yeah.
Just for you.
Yeah, kind of one of those type of things. And the ship, when when you first asked what the ship looked like, it was like the ship was doing numbers. I couldn't believe it was changing, and I was getting from him like, well, what ship looks more like the version that he, meaning me, wants to see? And I said, no, I want to see what it looks like. And the one I described was like a composite of this neat. I need to come up with a physical word that describes this emotional thing that he senses. It's like if he senses a person upset, then he brings on a vacuum exists in a person's consciousness, and he sends whatever the vacuum needs. So in a sense, it was like there's a vacuum felt from planet Earth emotionally, and so ships, physical spaceships, are moving in. Actually, consciousness disguised as spaceships is moving in to fill that void, that need that the consciousnesses of Earth are putting out now.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And he basically was describing that this is the basic way of all systems. Needs are formed and vacuums are filled. And I really got the sense of this giant epic space drama about struggling Earth with her environmental problems and everything else. But I got a strong sense of it being man's consciousness way of trying different ideas out. The whole doomsday and everything else type of thing as man's particular conscious solution to trying out different ways out of this space-time that he finds himself in.
Very good. All right, be sure you get your legs kicked up.
All right.
Let's see, I can show on the gauge.
Okay.
You have light?
Yeah.
What's the matter? Too much?
Just a little bit.
All right.
I get used to it anyway. Okay, here I come.
NDRO 8677. NDRO 8677. You will return now to full physical waking consciousness as I count from 10 down to 1. When I reach the count of 1, you will be fully wide awake both physically and mentally, and you will feel completely refreshed and better in every way. You will do this when I reach the count of 1. I'm going to count down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. You'll feel completely refreshed and wide awake in every way when I reach the count of 1. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wake up, you are wide, wide awake, both physically and mentally. Open your eyes, stretch your arms and legs, sit up, and breathe deeply several times.